Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you might be joining us from today. My name is Meg Alexander, and as always, I am honored, excited, and just can't wait to get started for another Power to Fly Chat and Learn virtual event. Now, before we dive into questions and stuff, I want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. This will be especially important if today is your first event with Power to Fly, and if that's the case, then hi, welcome. We're so happy to meet you today. Now, if you are part of our frequent flyer club, the love is no less real, y'all. I love seeing our familiar names and faces and avatars in the chat. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Now, before I get much further, because I always forget this part, visual call out and description for people. My name is Meg. I go by, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a 37-year-old white woman. I have a black sweater with white stars on, blue glasses, and pink and purple hair. Now, as we go through today, I'm going to give y'all a quick look at the code of conduct. This, again, is old hat to so many of our frequent flyers, but in case you have any questions, just know that it basically boils down to, as we are, connecting with each other today and networking with our speakers, just make sure that, as always, we are leading from a place of kindness and respect. If you've got any questions on that, you can refer to that code of conduct, or you can always ask me. I'll be in the chat if you got any questions. Julia, we're going to do those punch cards. You joke, but I'm telling you, we need to start a frequent flyer program here. All right. So the big thing to know about our events is that they are all about you. They're about our audience members and making sure that you get the value that you came to get from today's event. So if you want to participate, we highly encourage it, and you can do so in a number of different ways. If you want to, please feel free to turn your cameras on. I love seeing our smiling, maskless faces safely. But truly, there is no need to be Instagram perfect, y'all. I think I'm on day probably 4 of the dry shampoo messy bun combo. So whether you are coming to us from a corner office or your living room couch, you can be in your bathrobe or a 3-piece suit. We don't care, all right? We just want to meet you where you are so that you can come learn with us. Now, if you do want to participate with your camera, awesome. But if you don't and you just want to still join in on today's event, you can do so without ever needing your camera. You can head on over to the group chat if you'd like. Let us know where you're joining us from. I'm always really eager to see how far our global audience spreads. So please feel free to let us know. I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio, same as my buddy Rhea over here in the chat. This is land that belongs to the Fox, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi tribes in my area. So if you would like to share where you're joining from, please let us know. And you're welcome to share whose land you're on if you know that. Now, the big thing to know about our events, other than participation, is that we are recording today. Now, what that means for all of you is you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, relax, enjoy the conversation that I'm about to have with Bonnie, and really just, let yourself learn, okay? Be in the moment, listen to what these amazing people are telling you, and, just really enjoy it. Now, you don't have to worry if you missed a reference or a resource that someone listed, because you can always rewatch that recording. Now, how that's going to work is we are going to email everybody in about 4 to 5 business days with a link to where you can rewatch the recording once it's posted to powertofly.com. Now, let's say that Bonnie says something today absolutely mind-blowing, paradigm shifting. You cannot wait a couple days to tell a friend or a coworker or to forward the link to a relative. You don't have to. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. We're going to share links for all of this in the chat thread as we go. But you can head to our YouTube channel. We are live streaming there right now. Hi, YouTube. And the recording is usually posted by the end of the day. So if you want to get in on that, Rhea just shared the link in the chat as well. Thank you, Rhea. Now, the other thing that I want to encourage y'all, we got Boston, we have Venice, we have, let's see, Texas, Dallas, Baltimore, Toronto, Canada. I love Toronto also. Let's see, New York, Venice, Italy, Seattle, Washington. Y'all, I'm loving this. Columbus, Ohio. Hi, Mariana, not too far from me. Thank you all so much for chiming in. Now, as we are networking with our fellow speakers or our fellow attendees and reaching out and stuff, like I said, just make sure we adhere to the code of conduct. But the other thing I want to highlight for y'all is that we're going to be going over questions that you asked today. So we took a look at the questions that y'all asked at registration, tried to summarize them and kind of group them into categories as best we could. But we want to make sure that if you are here live with us today, that we reward you for that. So if you have a question that you asked and you're not sure if we're going to get to it or not, ask it in the chat. If we are going over one of your questions and maybe there's some context or detail that we should know to give you a better answer, ask it in the chat. If we are going over something and you want to dive in deeper on an acronym or a terminology or anything, ask in the chat. All right. I want to make sure that you get that value that you came to get. The time that you spend with Zapier and Power to Fly is well worth it. So ask in that chat. That is the best way to make sure that I can bring you the value you want from today's event. All right, now before we introduce you to our speaker today, I just want to highlight that she is here today on behalf of Zapier. Now, Zapier is on a mission. Oh, I just lost my notes, y'all. I'm so sorry. There it goes. Zapier is on a mission to make automation work for everyone so that every person and every business can move forward faster. Now, Zapier is the leader in no-code automation, which enables them to automate workflows and move data across 5,000 plus apps. Zapier works with what their clients work with across their apps and tech stack so that they can make magic happen regardless of their client's IT infrastructure or support team. Now, I'm really excited to dive in deeper on Zapier, but before we do that, I'm very excited to introduce you to Bonnie. Now, Bonnie is a recruiting manager. She manages the business recruiting team for Zapier, which is an SaaS company or software as a service. Bonnie started her career as an educator and worked in nonprofits before moving into tech in 2021, which is how you know that she is incredibly resourceful and can do basically anything on a shoestring. She's also a content creator where she shares career advice on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and via her newsletter. Bonnie, I'm so happy to welcome you to the stage today. Is there anything else that you would like our audience to know about you before we dive into questions?
Awesome. Thanks for the great intro. I'm super excited to be here. Let's see. I work at Zapier. I manage our recruiting team. I don't personally like recruit for anything, but I'm always happy to, kind of help folks get in front of the right person. I've been with Zapier now for about 2.5 years, like coming up on 2.5 years, and have had a great experience. It's honestly an awesome place to work. And I live like just outside of the Seattle area. And I spend most of my time hanging out with my like 3-year-olds. So I was telling Meg before this that I feel like I'm learning new things every day. Today I had to learn what a quatrefoil is, which I had never heard this before, but it's a shape that he is learning at school. So I apparently have to learn this too. So I feel like that's where a lot of my free time goes these days. But yeah, super excited to be here and answer your questions.
I love it. Give me a +1 in the chat, y'all. If you know what a quatrefoil is, we got to it by process of elimination. But truly, if you already know this, give me a +1 in the chat. I want to see how many like Mensa candidates we have in the audience today. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can highlight our wonderful faces and dive on into our first set of questions here. So a lot of people, we're here to talk about how to leverage your network to land your next job. And I think there's a lot of people when they hear network, that they kind of, it's easy to both be intimidated by this term and maybe underestimate what that network means. So let's start with real basics and kind of set us all up on the right foot here. When you consider someone's network, what are you talking about?
Yeah, great question. I honestly think like your network is like the world is technically your network, but I think about the people that you're probably like 1 to 2 degrees connected to. So who are the people that you know, whether it's from work, community groups, from your education, people you went to school with in kindergarten, like those are all your network, like people you know in some way, your family. And then the people they know are like your secondary connections, and the people those people know are your third-degree connections. So they can all kind of be your network, just some closer than others.
Yes, I love this. And it really, it doesn't have to be a scary kind of weirdly formal thing, right? Like it's just making connections. It's having like relationships with people. And whether that is a kind of, like it's not necessarily surface level, but like whether that's like an acquaintance level relationship or like your bestie, that's it's a little bit different. So it kind of makes sense. Sam is chiming in saying they knew what a quatrefoil was because they had roommates in a sorority, and that actually makes a ton of sense, which might be where I learned that because I have no idea where else I would have picked it up. But excellent. Thank you, Sam. Okay. This question, I felt this one hard a lot, actually. This person wants to know, how do you determine what is appropriate to ask your network? There's more questions after this, but let's start talking about if you're trying to overcome that fear of like asking too much.
Yeah. So I think it varies. And I think like how close you are to someone should probably like impact the kind of ask that you can make. Like my best friend could ask me to create a resume and set up like a dinner with someone she wants to meet that I know, and I would like do that. I would not do that for a random person I've never talked to before. And so I think like kind of keeping in mind, what is my existing relationship have, is there some sense of reciprocity between me and this like person where I can count on them to do more or less for me? Should like be considered. If it's someone you haven't talked to in 10 years, you're probably not going to ask as much as you would with someone that you see on a weekly basis. And also like how invested this person is in your success. Like one of my former bosses is also like one of my closest friends at this point. And I know that like he wants me to succeed in my career and would like do a lot to help me with that versus like some other people who just maybe aren't going to have a reason to put as much of their time and energy into me. So I think like kind of keeping that kind of stuff in mind. But I always try to keep the ask less than, minimize it and then let the other person be like, let me do more for you. Like let them offer more versus asking for a lot. I think when we ask for a lot, it feels overwhelming to the other person on the other end and they might just ignore you. So I think a lot of people go into networking with like, I would like time to meet with you. Asking for someone's time is a lot, especially if they have no like reason or there's no benefit to them from like meeting with you to help you. But if you maybe say, hey, I'm, interested in your company and have a couple of questions, you send the questions their way. And then, if this is a lot to respond to, I'd also be happy to, buy you a coffee and do like a virtual chat. You can send them a coffee gift card, whatever. Something like that. Then it gives them some options. It doesn't feel as high stakes or as like much of an ask of them, that sort of thing. So I would kind of approach it that way and then let them
Yeah. I
say, oh
like
my
that.
God, you don't have to buy me coffee. Let's go meet up. No problem.
Yeah. Well, and I like what you said about kind of keeping the ask low, if only because you don't really know this person yet, right? Like you're trying to kind of gauge what's going to happen here. And in my experience, like people do like to help other people, right? But a lot of the times when those connections don't go anywhere, it's because you've said like, "Oh yeah, can we like can I pick your brain? Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" But there's no other like context, right? So yeah, people want to help you, and time is a limited resource. So if you do want to get information from this person, throw in a couple of those questions. Hey, I wanted to ask you some questions. They're kind of along this line. Would you have time
Yeah.
to like, talk me through how you accomplished this thing? Or I really was, admiring your work on such and such project. I've got something else that I'm kind of kicking around. Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about how you made that come to fruition? Like
Yeah.
having a specific ask that sets the tone and sets the direction makes it a lot easier on that person to say yes, because that way they're not agreeing to give away 30 minutes of their time that
Right.
they don't know what is going to be used on. Plus, they might
Yeah.
need prep, right? Like I've had people call me and like they want to talk about Power to Fly, and I'm like, that's cool. I gotta like review to make sure that I know what to tell you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the other thing I was going to add as you were talking that I kind of thought of is like um, giving them, because I get the pick your brain a lot. And honestly, it feels like it could be anything. I think being clear about what you're asking so the person can even figure out, am I positioned to do this? I get so many requests from people. Like I work for one company. I have no idea what any other companies are like hiring for, what their process is. Like I'm not involved in that. I have no access that like anyone else has, like I don't have that. So all people contact me and say, hi, I'm looking for opportunities in like agricultural engineering. Please like connect me with your network. Um, I know nothing about that field. I have no access. So I'm like, I can't help you with that. And so I think like kind of looking at trying to understand like what this person does, like what space they're in. Are they actually positioned to be helpful with the thing that you need?
yeah,
And then can you be like really specific and clear about what it is that you need so that they can figure out, yes, like I can offer that or not.
yeah. The positioning is crucial for sure. Okay, so to follow along with that question that was asked earlier, what would you say are some of the common pitfalls when it comes to networking requests?
Pitfalls. I think one is like actually the being too vague. I think a lot of people are just like, take a look at my profile and let me know if you have any suggestions or ideas for me, or, if you have any opportunities that would be a good fit. Like you're asking someone else to do a lot of like research and looking at your profile and trying to figure out how to like make a match or something like that versus just telling them like, here's what I'm looking for. Here's a little bit about me. Can you help by doing X? Like, so I think the more specific you can be, the better. I think just another pitfall is like, I think we kind of talked about it, but like asking a lot of someone who just doesn't owe you anything or have like any reason to engage with you. I think that's where if you can build some sort of a connection, like if you are like, if they're active on LinkedIn, let's say, comment on some of their posts. So maybe hopefully they'll, you know, if you see them comment on something, which you can go see people's activities, if you see some comments they've made, go and respond and be like, great point, you know, something like that, so that your name is familiar. Then when they see your name in their inbox, they're more likely to be like, oh, I know that person. Like, where do I know them from? And you're a little familiar to them. They're probably more likely to respond to you than if you just kind of cold reach out to them. So, you know, small things like that, I think can help. And then I think one other one is just getting discouraged. Like something, I think people in sales and recruiting realize this, that like the vast majority of your emails or messages do not get opened. They do not get read. They do not get responded to. So if you're getting a response 10% of the time, you are actually doing really well. And so the vast majority of messages you spend, you're not going to hear back. You're not going to, you know, and that's just, that is just the culture that we have as a society, because there's so many DMs, so many, you know, emails. Some people aren't checking those regularly. Things get buried. So I think like also realizing if you're trying to do some of that and you think I'm just going to send 3 messages and have 3 people I connect with, chances are good you're not going to have a single connection out of those 3 messages. So I think kind of going in with that mindset can help people not get discouraged and not feel like, oh, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, I think
And
that's a really good point.
yeah. And then the other one I was going to say is like, where possible, if you can do things like get an intro from someone, like if like Kim, she's on and we work together. If I wanted to connect with someone and I saw Kim was a mutual connection, if I know that I'm more likely to get a response if I say, hey, Kim, can you like connect me to so-and-so? Or can you reach out to them and see if they'd be open to chatting with me? I am far more likely to get a response than if I like cold message them. Um, and so I think those sorts of things can all like help make it go better.
Yeah, I agree. And y'all keep in mind, you know, when she's talking about like those secondary connections, it's not a problem to ask these things, right? Like, hey, like I see that you know this person, would you be able to introduce me to them? It is a super simple, like it can be a LinkedIn email message, really. It does not have to be super like overthought or anything like that. Like just ask. And frankly, a lot of times people will absolutely connect you just because it makes people feel good to help. Like, can you do this thing? Yep, I can do that. Absolutely. It's a good feeling. So, and besides, if you're developing these relationships, someday you might be the person that then knows the person someone else wants to talk to. So if you are facilitating these or you're like reaching out and asking for them, it then signifies to the rest of your network this is something you're willing to do for other people, which is like really, really good. Okay, let's talk about some of like the connections. You know, you talked about sending out 3 emails is not likely to garner you three connections. What do you say if it comes to like an already existing connection that you haven't spoken with in a while? How can you kind of break the ice there to maintain a strong relationship, especially if maybe networking has not been your thing thus far?
Yeah. Um, I this is just my perspective. I would probably just like be direct about it. I think what most people do is like, hey, it's been a long time. Like, how are things going? And you know, they try a little bit of small talk and then like 2 messages in, it's like, okay, great. I like need a referral for your company. I personally think like you can skip that and just like be honest, like, hey, it's been too long since we connected, but I'm on my job search and notice that your company has an opening in UX and I work in UX. So wanted your thoughts on, I wouldn't ask like directly for a referral, but wanted your thoughts on the team and your company as an employer, you know, just let them know like what you're curious about. But I think again, like asking for their thoughts, their opinion is a lot easier, lighter of an ask than asking for a referral. So I would start there, let them like respond. And then you can say, oh, cool, it sounds like a great fit. I'm planning to apply, but you know, I know many companies have referral programs. So I wanted to check in if you have one, like, you know, I'm like, I would be willing to refer me, like, let me know, something like that. Again, it's actually most referral programs have some sort of benefit for the person referring you. So if it's a good fit, they're gonna want that too. They might even offer it. The thing I would say is like, I personally would not just like cold message anyone, even my close friends, with like a referral request is the first thing, unless it was such a clear cut. If it was like a recruiting manager role at another company like mine, I might say, hey, y'all have a recruiting manager role. I'm interested in it. Like, obviously, I'm really well qualified for it. I've been doing this job for a while. Like, would you mind referring? Or do you
Yeah.
want to refer me? Something like that. But outside of that, I probably wouldn't ask for the referral right away. Some companies limit how many referrals people can make. Also, a lot of people don't want to refer someone that isn't like super well qualified for the role because that can reflect negatively on them,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. And so I think saying, like trying to give them an out, in my opinion, is just like an easier way of like, or if you have a referral program and, want to refer me, like, let me know. That way they can kind of say, oh, we don't, or like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
out of referrals, or, but best of luck, something like that. And so that's probably how I would approach it.
I like that. I've followed it up in the past by asking, like I've asked about referral programs, and if they say no, then I say, oh, okay, that's really cool. Could you put me in touch with the hiring manager? Like, do you know who is working on this so I know who to reach out with or reach out to? And that might be a little bit more of a help that could get you a bit of a warm handoff to, to somebody within the HR department. But absolutely, like, you don't know if you don't ask, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a great suggestion to ask about like the recruiter or the hiring manager. And again, they may not know, or they may not, like, what I've realized is really big companies, the recruiters have no idea who works on anything. They might not have access to even figure that out. Like massive 10,000 plus companies, like literally, like the person you're messaging might have no way of figuring out, or no efficient way of figuring out who the recruiter is. So again, I also think like don't be offended if they say, I actually can't, or I'm not sure, or maybe they want to reserve that person's inbox because they get requests like this all the time. And they might say, I'll pass your name along. Honestly, I do that often with people, because I don't want to put my team in a position where they're getting more emails that they have to deal with. So I would
Mhm.
rather just like streamline the communication and say like, hey, heard from this person. Here's my thoughts on if they're a good fit, that sort of thing. So recognize that even if you don't get exactly the response you're hoping for, um, don't take that like personally. And it doesn't mean that they're not name dropping you behind the scenes, that sort of thing.
That's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. There are a lot of people in the work world right now, whether they're on the job hunt yet or not, that are trying to change careers. They want to pivot or they want to, transition to a new industry. What do you think those people should know? Like what should they know kind of starting off the ground?
Yeah. The first thing I will say is it is really hard to make career changes, particularly if you're trying to change into something that is very saturated, where there's a lot of competition. So, for example, whenever anyone tells me they want to move into recruiting right now, I tell them not to. Recruiters, I mean, like I think there have been like 100,000 plus recruiters laid off in the last couple of years. A bunch of people got pushed into recruiting in tech back in 2021 when there was this big hiring surge. And so they have like 1 to 2 years of recruiting experience. They got laid off quickly. Those people are all trying to find jobs right now too. And so I think right now trying to get into recruiting, especially if you're wanting to be like in a remote role, it's so competitive. So I don't think that would be like the most strategic shift for someone to make. And so I think trying to kind of get a sense of, are there a lot of opportunities in this field and in this industry? Can help. Targeting, if you're trying to make a career change, targeting on-site roles, you're going to have a lot more luck than targeting remote roles because, like on LinkedIn, fewer than 4% of roles that are posted right now are remote. And so if you're looking for jobs on LinkedIn, the vast majority of them are not actually going to be remote. And so there's tons and tons of competition for the ones that are. And so I think kind of looking at that, at the landscape of the position of the field that you're interested in. If you are currently employed, I think making career moves internally is a lot easier. So if, like at Zapier, we have a number of supports to help people. Like we have a lot of our kind of entry level engineering roles are actually filled internally from our support team. So people are able to sort of learn on the job. And then because we know them, we're more willing to give them like a longer learning curve moving in as like an entry level engineer. And so I always tell people if like you're new to engineering, coming in as like a support on our technical support team is a great entry point. And then you can like grow into an engineering role, and you're more likely to get that than trying to come in as an entry level engineer, which it's very rare that we hire those externally. And I know a lot of companies, because like your company knowledge and your understanding of the systems and how to navigate the company culture and stuff like that, that is such like an asset to the company that they're more willing to let you learn and grow in some other area that might be new to you. So obviously not everyone's like employed, but that's just something to think about. Or if you are moving into a company, maybe trying to go in an area that is more familiar to you, and then knowing like a year in, you can apply to transfer into another position that might align more with what you're looking for, or hoping to move into. So I would like think about some of those things. I think networking with industry professionals. So if you are, let's say you're a recruiter and you want to move into a compensation position, start following people in compensation, start like learning the lingo, see what you can learn. If you're currently employed, see if you can work on a project. Like I have a team member who has had interest in program management and different things like that. We were able to have him work on a project with our sales enablement team and like things like that. And so those are great things that you can add on your resume, where you can say, I've actually done this thing that's really similar, even if my job title isn't wasn't formally aligned to the roles I'm moving into. And so things like that I think can help. But yeah, that's what I would do. And then also if you're trying to make a change, like figure out where else can you be flexible. Like the remote is a big one. If you're trying to move into something you haven't done before, remote's going to be really hard. If you can target on-site, you're more likely to have there's less of a competitive pool there.
Yeah.
If you go into an industry that's hiring more aggressively, like gosh, who's hiring right now? A lot of government jobs, like education tends to
Yeah.
hire like more willing to take people who have less experience and kind of train you, those sorts of things. So, yeah, those are some ideas.
I like this. And if y'all are trying different, mechanisms or different tips or anything for transitioning or pivoting your careers, please let us know in the chat, because I really like learning from our experts, but I also really like us learning from each other. So if you've tried stuff, if it has or hasn't worked, please let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear from you there. Okay, this question was it was one that came in randomly, but we've gotten it twice in DMs in the chat so far. Do you think that that LinkedIn Premium is important for job seekers within the networking process? So like, in case you all haven't heard about this, like there's like a paid version of LinkedIn basically, that gives you, kind of some not upvotes, features. Do you think this is necessary? Do you think it's good to have? What's your opinion on it?
Yeah. I will be honest that I don't know all of the features that it offers. So I generally don't think you need it. I'm trying to think, because I think it gives you like a few more in mails, things like that. But I think there are other ways to try to like get access to that if you're spending time just like on LinkedIn, commenting, networking with people, and then building the actual connections, like sending connection invites to people after you've interacted with their content and things like that. Then you can, message people without premium. I did not have premium for the vast majority of my career, including my own job searches. The only time I've really had premium access um, is at Zapier, where we all have it, but for like LinkedIn Recruiter. But yeah, I think the only challenge is the emails, but a couple of workarounds from emails are: one, you can join different groups. And when you're in a group, you can message other members of that group from like within the group. You can message anyone that's in it for free.
Mhm.
So that's a way to get around the in-mail thing. So if you start joining lots of groups, like job seeker groups or like groups for the industry you're in, then you can get around some of those in-mail limitations that way. And I know a number of people have used that. You can also like comment on the person's posts a few times, and then after that you can say, hey, I'm gonna, send you a connection request. I would love to like message you, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And then, put the little note in the connection request. One other thing I would like consider with in-mails is if someone's not active on LinkedIn, they're probably not checking their in-mail. And so I I feel bad actually. I mean, I get like hundreds of in-mails a week and I just literally, I like cannot look at my inbox and keep up with it personally. And so I always feel bad if I see one labeled in mail, I try to go give like some sort of a response just so they can get their in-mail credit back. Because if someone responds to your in-mail, you get the credit back. So I
Well, that's
try to, but
nice.
like, yeah, but it's hard to like keep up with.
Oh,
So
same.
I
I'm
would really
horrible
use
about
some of
it.
those. Yeah, I would like use some of those other things. And I would only get premium if you feel like you're going to really use a number of the features. The other thing to know is that there are people who have premium often have like 6-month vouchers that or credits they can give away for people to have a 6-month access to LinkedIn
Mhm.
Premium. So I didn't even know this. I need to go find where mine are and see how many I have that I can give. But that's another thing is like you could potentially do a post that says, hey, I would love to try out LinkedIn Premium. I can't afford it. Is there anyone that can help? That sort of thing is something you could try.
I like that. We've got people chiming in the chat thread saying that if you do have LinkedIn Premium, you can message recruiters or hiring managers without having to send that connection request first. Extra in-mails, Nicole had said, and extra stats about how you can stack up against other applicants for a listing. These are all really, really great. Thank you, y'all, for chiming in here. I can personally tell you, I have used both LinkedIn Premium and regular LinkedIn. If you're not going to be hitting the job market hard for a month, I don't think you need LinkedIn Premium. That's personally, I've had better results job hunting for myself or job hunting for friends without it. But I think that's also because like if you can get a trial or if you can sign up for a month and then cancel, that might be a little bit better for you than to try and like keep that going for a while. Let's see. We do have a lot of people in here chiming in about some of their experience as well. So thank you all so much for joining here. I really appreciate the comments. Okay. There's a lot of people that want to talk about AI. And I don't think this chat is going to be able to escape without dealing with the subject either. Do you think, or are there any tools or AI applications that you recommend for helping to streamline or enhance the job seeking process?
Yeah. I feel like I've tested out all of the AI tools. My general like synthesis of these is that they are really helpful tools. They will not do the work for you. Any of the tools that like I have not yet seen, I've probably tried 10 plus of these like AI resume tools. I have not seen a single one that would produce a resume that I would feel comfortable sending out on behalf of myself or that I think would be like honest. However, I find them really helpful for giving me ideas like maybe showing like, hey, your resume doesn't include things that align to like these three like um job descriptions or requirements, things like that. So add that. And then here's like an idea. They're really good at giving you like examples that are formatted effectively of like what a good bullet point on a resume should be, but then you still need to edit it to make it accurate to the experience that you've had.
Yeah.
And I have seen a number of job seekers who have used those tools and then they're just like, great, I'm done. And their resume reads super generic because it's missing the specific example of how they actually did that thing. So it's like
Yeah.
use sourcing strategies to diversify pipeline, but it's like, which sourcing strategies did you use? You still need to add that specific thing in. Otherwise, it's not helpful. So um, I did share and I shared a link that Ria can share, but I made like a little guide with some ChatGPT prompts that y'all are welcome to look at because I think a lot of that stuff you can do on ChatGPT, which you can access for free. I do have the paid version. I assume the free version of ChatGPT does all the same stuff. But I have found that like you can probably recreate something. It's not going to format it for you and make it pretty the way that like one of those resume tools will. I haven't personally tried the AI, um, application things that will submit apps on your behalf. I haven't personally tried it just because I'm not applying for jobs. I know people that have. I am not like 100% convinced that that's actually going to be effective. I have seen like a lot. I have friends who work in recruiting, at least. I haven't necessarily seen this for like our own applications, but I have like, I saw a post on LinkedIn recently from a friend in recruiting who was like, the first 100 apps that we got literally all looked identical and appeared to all be like AI generated responses, like auto submitted. Is this a thing now? And you're like, it is a thing, but it's so obvious. It's so generic. And especially if you're applying for really competitive jobs, the top candidates are not going to just give generic, I want to work at your company because I am passionate about your mission or something, they're
Yeah.
giving like thoughtful responses. And so I right now like don't feel like I can recommend any of those AI application services.
I mean, I think
Um,
you make a good point, right? It's nice for a jumping off point. It's really good to kind of get you like get you shoved into, all right, we're writing the things. It's a really good way to
yeah,
get over that, like, I don't know what to say. But you're right, it absolutely does not, it doesn't take away the need to proofread, to go through and see what this thing has actually said that you did. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, absolutely let the robots do the part that they can. But
right.
yeah, like it's definitely going to take some human touch afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ria just chimed in the chat thread. She shared that link for that response guide that Bonnie made. So please feel free to check out that link. Save it if you'd like, because we want to make sure that all these resources are available to y'all. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Zapier specifically. What do you think is the best way to land an interview with Zapier and do the Zapier? We literally discussed this and I just said it in the sentence. What do you think people should do to land that interview with Zapier? And do you have any specific strategies for networking within the company?
Yeah. Um, for specifically landing a job, I think one of the things I will tell anyone is to be an early applicant. One of my team members just posted a role at the beginning of the week and closed it yesterday. So Monday, closed it on Tuesday because it already had 500 applications. Like this is very common right now and it's common for any remote company because one, a lot of people have filters for remote roles and there aren't a lot of them. And second, because you're competing against a national or global workforce. And so there's just, lots of people that could be submitting apps versus if it was just for Atlanta, you're only competing against who's in Atlanta. Yeah, I think being an early applicant, setting up alerts, we do have on our jobs page, we have something you can use to set up an alert to know when a role that aligns with your interests is posted. Definitely recommend that stuff and just like moving quickly, really put thought into the applications. We have application questions for two reasons. One, we want to like give people a chance to show a little bit more of their background and skills that may not be clear on the resume. We don't even technically require a resume to apply. We have no cover letter. Like we want people to not feel like those things are barriers to applying quickly. So you can apply with like a LinkedIn profile or, but we sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But we take those application questions seriously. And one of the things I have seen over and over again is people with like really fancy resumes just write see resume on that application. And we actually end up rejecting people that could probably do the job, but like they didn't show us like their experience and how it would translate on the application. And someone else whose resume may not have been as impressive did. And that
Yeah.
person is going to get the interview. And so it's one of the things we try to do for like make things more equitable and give more people a chance. But I do feel like some people just don't take that seriously or it bothers that, they don't want to do it, which I totally understand, but like we use those. So yeah, that is definitely important. I see the question. We don't have a cooling off period. Like you can apply whenever you want. I do think if you're applying for the same job that you just applied for, you're probably not going to be considered because if you were rejected because your skills were not where they needed to be or your experience didn't align, then like that hasn't changed in a month. But if you were rejected because we had enough applicants right now, but you were a strong candidate, then we tag you for the future. So we would have already like we would have like come to you and let you know about the role, that sort of thing. So I say, I always say it's like our job to filter people out. It's not your job to filter yourself out. So go ahead and apply.
Yes.
But like you may not be considered if you're applying for the exact same role multiple times. Um, within like a short period where your experience hasn't changed. Trying to
Great
think like
question, by the way.
what else
Thank
for
you for that one.
Zapier. I think I think like engaging with some of our stuff, following people at Zapier, and I just say this because then it's easier. Like I will sometimes just have people who message me and they're like, hey, I've been following you for a while, just apply for this role. When that comes in, I'm like, oh, let me, go check out their app and like make sure a recruiter looks at it, that sort of thing. So that stuff can help just kind of speed things along. Um, yeah, I don't know if there's other people from Zapier who have ideas, but those are some of the things that come to mind for me.
I like that. Now once you get in the door, what was it like? I mean, you've been at Zapier for 2.5 years. What was it like for you walking in and trying to build a network within the company?
Yeah, this is hands down the best job I've ever had. Like I don't if a recruiter reaches out to me about a role, I do respond to them, and I always recommend that you respond and engage with everyone about like good opportunities for your networking and all of that. But it's like the only place I've worked where I'm like, I don't even really like care to be out in the job world. This is such a good job, like such great people. So I had such an awesome experience. The onboarding was one of the best ones I've had, because they just really give you the first 2 weeks to like focus on learning the company and just networking and stuff like that. Like you don't have any work related to your actual job. You actually get to learn the product. I learned how to build Zaps. There is one of the things that Zapier does that I've talked about this like on LinkedIn and stuff, but we have so many good guides that give information on like how to communicate. And here's like examples of the tone that we tend to use when we're on Slack. Here's when we use email versus when we use Slack. Like we don't use email. So first job I've had where I check my email like once a day. I thought,
Isn't that wonderful? Slack is
yes,
the
I just am
greatest,
on
y'all.
Slack all day, but like my email, if
Email's
you
gross. I don't like that. It's like a swamp.
yeah. But those are things like I wouldn't have known. And they're so good at like telling you when you start and just kind of making all that implicit stuff that you normally have to figure out really explicit and clear. So I really appreciated that. And let's see.
And for the
Um,
people asking about PIP, that's a performance improvement plan. Been on those before. Super fun. Yeah,
um,
getting put on one 3 months into a new job though, that's straight bonkers.
um, yeah. So but
No,
yeah,
I
so I had a great onboarding experience here. Um, yeah, I have like thoughts on the PIP thing. So now I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that, but I'll back off on the
all
point.
right. No, we can go into that,
But
but
yeah, I
let's
had a
finish on
great
the question.
onboarding
Yeah.
experience and really appreciated the time to get to know the company, being able to like set up meetings with people, being encouraged to like get into fun spaces. We also do things like writing what we call like a README. It's just sort of like a guide to working with you.
Oh, I
And
like that.
working style is, what hours you're planning to work, things like that. And then you're supposed to like read that too. And I'm an easily distracted person, so don't apologize. It's not your fault. But yeah. So I think stuff like that like really helped for kind of setting the tone for the company culture.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I like that. All right, let's talk about from the job seeker perspective. Do you have any tips for people who are trying to authentically align themselves with a company's culture, especially via networking? This can feel really odd because like you're kind of trying to take a peek from the outside to what you think is going to play best. What do you suggest people do in this situation if they're trying to make sure that it is obvious that they align with company culture?
Yeah. So one, like read the company's core values and then also like check out places like Glassdoor, or there's comparably like there's different sites where people leave reviews. Glassdoor is the biggest one I can think of, but like read the reviews, don't like less attention to the numbers, more to like what do the reviews say and what are the really lengthy ones, not the ones where someone's angry at like post layoff, for example. A lot of companies you'll see everyone's just upset about that. But kind of scroll down and find the ones where people are talking about the real like day-to-day experiences of working at the company. And also not ones from people who are happy because I just finished my first week. It's so great. Like those are not helpful either. It's the ones that are, it's like, I've been there for 2 years and here's like what I've learned. Try to find those reviews, that sort of thing. And then I think that can like give you a sense of what the culture is and just make some like simple connections. Like I know coming to Zapier, some of the things like I saw that there was just a lot of like authenticity seemed to be like a real thing and transparency. And those are things I really like and I like kind of connected to throughout the process. as, like I saw that you guys really value transparency, and I'm personally really excited about that because I think that we need to like bring people in on the processes, and like the idea of like working in public and letting people like give you feedback along the way and collaborating. I've worked in so many places where we're siloed. And so seeing that that's something really important here and actually plays out in your day to day really fits with my style. Like those sorts of things where you are making connections, very simple. You don't actually have to like go into a ton of detail, but you're just reinforcing for them, and they're hearing, because we take shortcuts. So they're like, oh, this person just, must really be aligned. They're into transparency, they're into feedback, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And even without evidence of that, they're going to like see that as a part of you and see you like aligning with their culture.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think this is great advice. Absolutely. All right. We've talked about kind of these areas within job applications and the job seeking world right now that are very competitive. If you are in that incredibly competitive market or finding yourself in a very competitive situation, what are some of the ways that people can stand out if they know the applicant pool is absolutely packed to the brim?
yeah. I think one, having a really good application. I think your application has to make it clear to someone who does not know you that you're a really strong fit for the job. And I think a lot of people, and I do this, I've talked about this also on LinkedIn, but I think people struggle with that piece a lot, honestly, and apply for jobs that they see themselves as like perfectly qualified for, but that on paper, they're just not.
Mhm.
And because I think a lot of people are like, well, someone can read between the lines, or they'll know that I did that thing,
Yeah.
even if it wasn't, aligned to my title and it's not on my resume. And they probably won't. And so like they're not going to have like the mental energy when they're going through hundreds of applications to try to connect the dots. If they have
Mhm.
10 applicants, they will. If they have 10 applicants, they are going to read every line and be like, okay, maybe this is this. Let me get them on the phone to see if they have this experience. But if they have 1,000 applications and they know 50 of them have every single checkbox marked, they're not going to take the time to try to figure out or get you on the phone to figure out if you're a fit, because they have so many that have made that clear.
Mhm.
So I think when you're in that competitive space, it has to be so crystal clear how qualified you are for the job, and you have to do more of that like tailoring of the resume. A couple of things, some of this is extra work. I know people don't want to do extra work in their job search process, but I can probably count on two hands how many people have done things like this. But sending a message that maybe links to, hey, like here's a slide deck I made that tells a little bit more about me and my passions for the role. And I've seen people do that, and especially when they're not maybe perfectly qualified, it's a little bit of a stretch, but they kind of introduce like, here's my background and why I'm trying to make the move I'm trying to make, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think having something like that, so few people do it. It's such like an above and beyond move that I think when like a hiring manager or recruiter gets that, they might say, well, let me like give this person a shot. They're clearly like really putting it, they may not, but they may. So,
Yeah.
if you link something, and it gives you a reason to really like reach out to them and send that extra message to say, hey, I applied, but there's a little bit more I wanted to share. Here's a link to this deck that sort of outlines why I'm making this career move, or why I see myself really aligning to your company, or to this kind of work, that sort of thing. Kind of like a little portfolio type thing. So
I like
I
that.
again, very small handful of people that have done it, but and there's a post on LinkedIn that she just posted a template yesterday. Kaylee Trussell is her name. I'm linking this in my newsletter today too. So, but if someone wants to go find Kaylee's message, she has a Canva template that she uses that I thought was cool. Yeah, so just stuff like that, I think is so rarely done. But yeah, if you have like networked with the company, if you've engaged with the company, you've liked their content, message the recruiters or comment on a post, hey, just applied for this role, can't wait to hear back. Like those sorts
Mhm.
of things, I think um, can help. Someone just asked video. Yeah, I've heard of people
Yeah.
doing these like videos. I have yet to receive a video from someone, but I mean, I think especially if you can do it like one time, it's a quick thing. I
Yeah.
say do that stuff because this market is competitive. If I were job hunting right now, I would be doing like all those things
Yeah.
personally because I recruiting is so saturated that I feel like I would have to like do a lot to
Oh
have a
yeah.
shot.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you're hitting a lot of the stuff that we tend to focus on in these chats because I don't know about the audience, but before I had any work experience in recruiting, I don't think anybody ever really explained to me what happens with your resume, right? Like there's all this work that goes into like, here's how you want to craft it and put this and put that and whatever. But it's like, okay, what happens once it's out of your hands? Once you know what happens and you realize, like, like you said earlier, if they've got 10 applicants for a role, then yeah, there's going to be a little bit more thought and a little bit more time spent reading every single line of each of those 10 applicants because you got to find the right one. I was not aware until way too late in the process that you're not just leaving breadcrumbs along that trail, right? You need to be dropping entire loaves of bread 3 inches apart. Like it needs to be unavoidably clear and easy to see why you
Exactly.
are a good fit for this. And so I totally understand the idea of like, well, I'm not in recruiting. Maybe I'd fit better somewhere else. Maybe they'll be able to tell me that. I get that. But they're only going to be able to tell you so much, and you need to bury them in information about you so that way they
Yeah.
have that information, right? You need to make it clear, I did this and it's exactly like that thing that you want because
Yeah.
reasons.
And just like as an example, so I moved into talent acquisition about 9 years ago. And so um, from I was in more like instructional leadership, but I managed a team and I loved hiring for my team. And that was what told me I wanted to be in recruiting was how much I loved hiring for my own
Okay.
team. And when I started applying for these talent acquisition roles, my resume, even though my job was like managing learning and development for teachers, my resume looked like I spent all my time hiring. Like pretty much every bullet point was focused on the work I did building my team, attracting talent, what steps I took. Like that was what I highlighted. And I was like one of the people that did that deck thing. I literally took every job line of like the job description for this like recruiting role I really wanted. And I was like, here is how I've done that thing in my current role. And then I had a friend also refer me for the role, blah, blah, blah. I ended up like getting it. So, but I had to like make it so clear on my resume and I left off some of the less relevant stuff because even though I had spent a lot of time doing that, because I wanted them to see front and center, this person knows like talent acquisition.
Yeah, well, and it's a presentation, right? Like yes, there might be other things that you've done in your working history, and it's not to say that those things aren't important or that you can't tell them about them later on, but you are trying to make it unavoidably clear that you are excellent fit for this role. Here's why. So yeah, absolutely. I love that advice. That's great. Okay, we've got about 7 minutes left in today's event. And I do want to make sure we save a little bit of time to talk a bit more about Zapier, and to get y'all some information on your job search and how you can kind of utilize the Power to Fly website to make, the best impression. We do have a question from JL. They want to know if Zapier uses ATS for applications or resumes. For anybody that's not aware, ATS is usually like an applicant tracking service. So it might be like a secondary like portal that you go to, send in your resume, complete the applications, all that kind of stuff. Do y'all use
So
this at Zapier?
every company uses an applicant tracking system. I'm going to do some misinformation addressing because almost every company, unless they have like, they have you emailing someone, you're applying through an ATS. You go to their website, there is some sort of system set up to collect your information and put it into some sort of a format that the recruiter can see all of that information. So like at Zapier, we use a system called Greenhouse, which is very popular. A lot of the tech companies use it. But yeah, every company uses one, and it's just how recruiters see your information. It is not screening people out. The ATS is not rejecting you. Like all of those things that coaches are out there telling people that you have to like figure out how to beat the ATS is not a thing. We literally just click next and it shows your resume and kind of in the order received, honestly, and then you just click through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a sorter, basically. You're getting
Yeah,
sifted into piles. Is pretty
it
much all
does
it's like.
have it does of course have search features. So if like we're looking, we only want to consider people that have used, HubSpot, let's say, then we might search the word HubSpot to see like who has used, pop
Yeah.
up like the people who have HubSpot listed. So there are like search features there. So I don't want to pretend it's like only displaying, but
Yeah.
it not rejecting people. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. Okay. In the last 5 minutes we have left, is there anything that we haven't covered that you really wanted to talk to us about when it came to networking, that we really haven't gotten into? Oop, you're on mute. Hold on.
Sorry.
You're okay.
Um, I was saying I can't think of anything, but I'm seeing some questions like Zapier hires globally, but is time zone a limit? And it is. Most of our roles do have some sort of time zone consideration, and they are generally listed on the applications.
Okay, great. All right. I have a couple questions that are usually my favorite to ask people. So apologies, y'all. I want to make sure we get y'all as much info as we can. What is for you? What is the thing that you love about Zapier? I'm never going to find this anywhere else, so this is where I'm sticking. You know, your parking spot, Taco Tuesdays in the lunchroom, your besties across the hall. What
None of
is the thing
those
that
because
you
I
love
don't
with
have an
Zapier?
office. It's, or maybe it is. Yeah, I like the people in my house. So I honestly, I mean, the remote work is like part of it, but putting that aside, I think it's like the general culture of just like authenticity and like meeting people where they are. I haven't really experienced that. A lot of companies will say we want you to like be yourself, but I really feel like at Zapier, people can just kind of be themselves and don't have to really put on a show in terms of how they talk about things or picking and choosing, like being really careful with their words or, dressing a certain way, like just all
Yeah,
that stuff I think I've experienced in other workplaces. I don't like feel that at Zapier. So yeah, I
I
really
like that. Okay. And then my last question for you is, do you have any advice for someone who is interviewing? Is there, don't mention the word pancakes because we don't like those here, or make sure that you talk about how much you love armadillos because it's our mascot.
yeah, like interviewing specifically at Zapier.
Yeah, let's do Zapier
Or
specifically.
what advice do I have? Yeah, like I mean, I think this applies to a lot of places, but be specific about your experiences. Like when someone asks you for, a time that you've done XYZ, like share those specific examples, like share the details, like really kind of paint the picture of your experience. I think that goes for anywhere. The other thing I think with like remote companies, and again, I think this probably applies to any remote company, but there is actually like a skill to working in a remote environment, and not everyone has it. And I know people who actually have gotten into remote work and struggled because they're not able to kind of like figure stuff out on a computer system where you don't have someone you can ask, and where you're like having to kind of search and find more things yourself, which I've seen people like really struggle with that at Zapier. And so I think being able to sort of speak to the any experiences you've had or your like understanding of working in a remote environment. Most of our positions will ask people like what experience as part of the interview. You'll be asked like, have you worked remotely before? Like, what do you think it would take to like succeed in this environment? So I think really thinking about that and being able to speak to it can be helpful.
Yeah, I mean that's great advice, and like you said, it's not for everybody. That is absolutely true. And when I got my first remote role, I had never worked remotely before. The thing that I highlighted on my resume was times where I had been given complete control of my schedule. So like, here's your projects, you figure out when they need to get done, kind of thing. So I highlighted stuff like that. I highlighted when I had worked asynchronously from the team. So times when I came in a couple hours early because I had a doctor's appointment and needed to work, like needed to leave early, I would highlight that and say like, here's the, I have worked asynchronously with these teams, blah, blah. The other thing that I highlighted was any time that I have worked in a different office from where the people I was emailing were located. So even when I was emailing people that were in my same building, but we did not share rooms, we were not in the same department, I talked about that because that was communication that you had to do that had to be asynchronous, or that had to be, you weren't able to follow it up with a stop by someone's desk. So like highlighting stuff like that will absolutely help you. All right, Bonnie, we're out of time, but thank you so much for being here with us. This has been
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thanks so
Really,
much
really.
for having me. And yeah, hopefully it was helpful. And feel free to send any other questions my way. But great to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Y'all stay tuned for that rewatch email that's going to come out with us. We'll also be linking that doc that Bonnie shared to those chat GPT prompts. So we'll share that with y'all as well. If this has been your first Power to Fly event, I sincerely hope it will not be your last. And if this was your millionth one, we are still so happy to see you back each and every time. I have a job because you come to events like this, but I am honestly proud of all of you for coming, because this was an hour that you carved out of your day to do something positive for yourself and your career. That is not easy. Okay. You all deserve a cookie or a gold star or a pat on the back, whatever your little treat is. Y'all deserve that today. So I hope that y'all will go out, have a safe, happy, healthy rest of your day, and go have the day you deserve. All right. I can't wait to see y'all back here on another event. Bye.